It's now time for Energy Insights, where you get an inside view and local perspectives of all the oil and gas progress going on in the Mid-Ohio Valley. This program is being brought to you by the Southeastern Ohio Oil and Gas Association and can be heard every Saturday at 9 a.m. on local radio WMOA AM 1490 and ESPN radio WJAW FM 100.9 and AM 630. It's now time for the show. Here's Johnny Wharf, your local host.
Energy Insights on a Saturday morning. Johnny Wharf, again joined by David Hill, David R. Hill Incorporated, and we had an opportunity last week to give you a little background and your relationship to the former president of the Ohio Oil and Gas Association. I'd like to get a little more specific, and I hear the term injection wells, and like most of our listeners, I'm not exactly sure what that means. So let's start there, and then we'll see where it takes us.
Okay, very good. Well, in addition to being an oil and gas operator, David R. Hill Incorporated, my company, we operate 2 Class II injection wells in Guernsey County. And injection wells are probably one of the most misunderstood aspects of our business. So I appreciate the opportunity of allowing me to explain to your listeners what actually they are. So, a byproduct of drilling oil and gas, whether it's a conventional well or a horizontal Utica or a Marcellus well, is they're also going to make formation water. We call it connate water. And the U.S. EPA says the best way to do this and the safest way is through an injection wells. And there are many different classes of injection wells. When we say Class II injection well, it can only accept material from an oil and gas operation. The other classes are chemical injection, things like that, which we have nothing to do with. So we're regulated ultimately under the Ohio or the U.S. EPA. There was a piece of legislation in 1974 called the Safe Drinking Water Act. That is ultimately what we're regulated under. Now, the state of Ohio has been able to prove to the U.S. EPA that their standards are as strict or stricter than theirs. So on a local level, we're regulated by the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. In Ohio, there's about 202 or 203 active injection wells. In the United States of America, there are over 180,000 Class II injection wells. So one of the refrains you'll hear out there is, well, why does Ohio have to be the recipient of all this water? Really, we're not. Volumetrically, we inject 0.5% of all of the oil and gas water in the United States. We're not, you hear the term dumping ground. We are in no way a dumping ground for anybody. 0.5% is what represents Ohio.
So, I mean, that's very enlightening, again, coming into this, not knowing. I feel like I've just learned a college course in the less than a couple of minutes. But go back to the safe part. So the regulators say this is the safest way, and when you're injecting wells. And so, kind of take us, how do you do it? I mean, what are we injecting into?
Very good. So we're going to drill a hole in the ground, and we're going to run casing, much like a conventional oil and gas producing well. For example, I drilled a well, a Class II injection well in Belmont County. Now, it ended up being, wasn't a successful producer, and I've since abandoned it. But in that well, I ran 7 different concentric layers of steel casing. Each one of those were cemented back to the surface. We have 5 layers of casing, 5 layers of cement. As I mentioned earlier, we're regulated under the Department of Natural Resources. Every aspect of everything I do there, from the running the casing, cementing the stuff, and then monitoring how I inject that water, is all monitored by state oil and gas inspectors. They're there every step of the way. So I want your readers to be comfortable in the fact that there is multiple layers of oversight of a Class II injection well, from drilling to the actual operation till the ultimate day, someday when that well is going to be plugged and abandoned. That's going to be regulated and monitored as well.
Okay, so let's say David R. Hill Incorporated is doing the injection well. Where does this fall into the process of just a regular producer? Are you working for them, or how does it, where do you fall in the process of extracting the oil?
Sure. So when I first drilled my well in Guernsey County in 2007, I was drilling conventional oil and gas wells. The price of commodity was higher. We were drilling a lot more. And as I mentioned earlier, the byproduct of producing oil and gas is water. And I had to go to an independent site and pay them to accept my water. And it was a business model. Well, what I found out was those guys were doing okay. The other thing was we were very busy back then, and I was spending a lot of time with my trucks sitting on a well pad idling, waiting to unload. I wanted to have a quicker, more streamlined process, so I drilled my own wells and was injecting the water. Then along came horizontal drilling, much more water, and so I opened my well up for commercial use as well. So now I'm accepting water from the horizontal Utica wells, and they pay me a per barrel fee to inject their water down my well. Now, the other thing I'd like for your listeners to know is also, again, I'm highly regulated. The state of Ohio gets a fee for every barrel that goes back in the ground to fund the regulatory process. So the oil and gas industry is paying to have the regulatory process and make sure that it's well funded. So again, your readers can know that the regulations they're fair, but they're stiff, and they have the manpower to regulate those as well.
David Hill, our guest here on Energy Insights, brought to you each and every Saturday morning by our good friends at the Southeastern Ohio Oil and Gas Association. You can tune in next week for more right here on this station.
Thank you for listening to Energy Insights, brought to you by the Southeastern Ohio Oil and Gas Association. Tune in every Saturday at 9 a.m. on WMOA and ESPN Radio WJAW as Johnny Wolf brings you your local and inside perspectives of the oil and gas progress going on in the Mid-Ohio Valley.